Honestly, I can only assume that the reason that Taylor Swift hasn't yet been given a Nobel Prize is because they can't decide whether to give it to her for literature, for the lyrics that she produces, or just go full out and give her the Nobel Peace Prize for saving 2020 with folklore. Give Taylor Swift her damn Nobel Prize. This is a hill I will die on. Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jack Edwards and today's video is very kindly in partnership with Stereo. So, over the past few months, I have been reading books recommended by my favourite celebrities. We've done Harry Styles, we've done BTS, and today, it's Taylor's version. You see what I did there? To celebrate Taylor Swift being an absolute icon and re-releasing Fearless, I thought we would dedicate the next 2 weeks of my life to reading all of the books that Taylor Swift has recommended. And there's a lot. I'm gonna have to be pretty fearless to get through this pile. Back in December, I actually made another video where I spoke about all of the literary references on Folklore and Evermore, and this woman's mind is insane. But for today's video, we are going to be focusing on this very aesthetically pleasing list of books that Taylor Swift has recommended throughout her whole career. So without further ado, let's get on to the reading.
On tonight's program, ladies and gentlemen, we have something that's gonna make you sick.
Okay, so the first book I read was this one. This is called Furious Love, and this is a biography about the actors Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, who pretty much invented celebrity culture. They would hang out with royalty, they had excessive wealth, so much so that Richard Burton once paid the most ever paid for a single jewel as a gift to Elizabeth Burton. Like, he outbid Cartier. One thing I learned from this book is that at one point, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor were responsible for half of the whole US film industry's profits for a single year. That is insanity. So they got together in the 1960s when they were both married to other people at the time, so it was a bit of a scandal, to say the very least. In fact, that's the understatement of the century, as in, like, they were condemned by the Pope. And their subsequent marriage was known as the marriage of the century. They then got divorced, and then got back together again, and then divorced again. It's messy, hence why this book is like 500 pages long. Okay, here's a little fan theory for you. I am almost certain that Taylor's Wildest Dreams music video is inspired by this love story. And that is because Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton would travel all around the world together shooting films. Their relationship was so tumultuous and they would have these massive rows on set. They would make up, they would break up, they would have a lot of the old hanky-panky, a bit of bonking. I'm trying so hard not to get this video demonetized right now. And Taylor Swift literally looks like Elizabeth Taylor in that music video. You cannot convince me that it was not inspired by this. So overall, I really enjoyed reading this biography. I actually learned quite a lot. Like, for example, the term paparazzi comes from the Italian dialect word paparazzo, and paparazzo basically means a small buzzing insect, kind of like a mosquito, so very annoying and irritating and buzzing around like the paparazzi. I did find the book weirdly repetitive at times, like sometimes it would tell the same story twice, but overall, thanks for the recommendation, Taylor, and even though you will never watch this video, I have a recommendation for you in return. I think you would love The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, because it's also about celebrity culture, and I think Evelyn Hugo, who is fictional, is very much inspired by Elizabeth Taylor. Now on to the next one. The next book Taylor Swift has recommended is The Hunger Games, which she said she read in 2 days because she was enjoying it so much, and I feel like that is so relatable. I think we all had that response to The Hunger Games. Even thinking about it now, I can't believe that there was a moment in my life where I hadn't read the I Volunteer as Tribute scene. Like, it's so iconic now. I was actually raving about how much I love The Hunger Games as a book on my Stereo live stream last night, so I'll insert a clip from that now.
Hey guys, I just wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on The Hunger Games?
Oh, The Hunger Games! I think the storytelling is immaculate. For me, one of the most interesting things is the girl on fire, which is one of the most kind of like well-known motifs in that book.
That's true.
Katniss comes from District 12, which is known for its coal. Coal is necessary for the production of fire. When Katniss becomes the girl on fire, I think she almost is like reclaiming that and proving to the Capitol, to these bigwigs in the Capitol that, you know, look, you can't survive without us. We produce your fire, and that's something that the people across the districts have never really had represented before.
Especially when she gets like the later symbol of like the Mockingjay, and like it's all about her mocking the capital, but also like flying free as well, being like, we're not going to be held by your tyranny, we're gonna like save ourselves, and it's done superbly well. And I think it is a really good like conversation, not only about like politics, but also like capitalism as well, and like exploitation of the kids. at the end of the day, because they literally exploit these kids like every year for sport.
And Stereo is basically a live broadcasting app, and my next show will actually be at 7 p.m. on Monday the 12th of April, so come and join if you fancy it. It's such a cool platform with so many diverse speakers. It's very, very interactive because you can send in your questions as audio messages, so it feels like we're actually having a conversation and you can kind of feel the community while we're live, so very, very cool. Come and join, and the link will be down below. And ever since Joel mentioned this idea of the Mockingjay, I haven't stopped thinking about it, because the Mockingjay is essentially a result of a capital failure. So they had these Jabberjays, which they would send into the districts to spy on people, but the Jabberjays mated with mockingbirds. So the Mockingjay is essentially a mutation. It's a reminder that there are things outside of the capital's control. And that is why Katniss becomes known as the Mockingjay, as a symbol of the revolution, because she herself is a mutation of the Hunger Games system, and a glimmer of hope to the districts that there is some kind of weakness in the capital. I think it's so clever. And Taylor Swift contributed 2 songs to the Hunger Games films, and I think this shows her big brain energy, because the 2 songs show the 2 different sides of Katniss's priorities. Firstly, we have Safe and Sound, which is a very haunting, chilling song that's kind of about Katniss's relationship with Rue, with Prim, with Peter, and it's all about empathy and compassion. And then we have the song Eyes Open. And Eyes Open is the anthem, it's the battle cry, it's Katniss's relationship with the capital. Taylor Swift has done it again, my friends. Hello, it's a new day, and I've just been listening to the song London Boy, and I had forgotten that Taylor Swift literally name checks Camden, which is where I live, in that song. Like, has Taylor Swift been to my local Sainsbury's? Because that's mental. That is really crazy. I'm just thinking, imagine standing in the hummus aisle and you look to your left and it's Taylor frickin' Swift. I think I would simply die. On the spot. That would be it for me. Anyway, the next book that I read was this one. This is Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. This is a book about a woman who reaches her rock bottom in terms of her marriage and her mental health. And so she takes a 1-year kind of sabbatical from life, and she goes to India, to Italy, and to Indonesia. Basically, it's a gap year. She takes this time to indulge in delicious food, to discover mindfulness and meditation, and also ultimately to love herself again. And this was one of Taylor's picks for You Are What You Read. And I can see why, because this book does make you want to be a better version of yourself and sort of identify and pursue the pleasures in life. It's very introspective and candid and raw and honest. It's this one woman's self-discovery journey. The one thing I will say though is that you just need to be aware that Elizabeth Gilbert has a lot of privilege, and occasionally it's acknowledged, but other times there are these moments of such little self-awareness it's actually painful. Like at one point she says that she's broke, but we later find out that during that time she managed to go on trips to Costa Rica and New Zealand, and like that is not living la vida broca. One thing I was glad that she kind of clarified is that she didn't necessarily see India, she saw the one very specific meditation center that she went to, and she does recognize that, so I think that's good. Overall, this is a self-help book which does require a certain element of being comfortable with wealth, but it doesn't necessarily claim to be for everyone, so I think just take it with a pinch of salt. But overall, not too bad. On to the next book. Okay, so I've read 2 more books now. These were both children's books, they were quite quick to read through, but I think you can still analyze a lot from children's books, and they're still literature. Also, yes, I am wearing a Spice Girls t-shirt. This is British culture. So another one of Taylor's picks for You Are What You Read was Charlotte's Web, and I cannot believe I've never read this before. This is a really charming, sweet story about animals and about friendship. So you have Wilbur the pig, who is due to be slaughtered, and then Charlotte, who is a spider, basically writes things in her web, like calling the pig radiant and stuff, and then people are like, wow, the pig is so cool. Now here's my issue. Why was Wilbur the pig getting all the credit for Charlotte's work? Like, the pig didn't write that in the web. He just sat there rolling in manure. Meanwhile, Charlotte the spider did all the hard work and got no credit. And maybe I'm overthinking it. I mean, I'm definitely overthinking it. But I was thinking about the gender politics, or the fact that you could think of Taylor Swift as being the spider who is writing away, she's doing all the hard work, she's doing all of the craft. And then Wilbur, the pig, the male character, maybe Kanye West and Scooter Braun, is taking credit for the spider's hard work and capitalizing on it. Much to think about. Or maybe it's just a book about a pig and a spider. The other book was this one. This is Stargirl. And I am so mad because look at that cover. Okay, the color is nice, but what the hell is going on here? I am outraged that I spent my money on a cover like that. This is so boring. But what we're not gonna do is judge this book by its cover. The contents of this book are about a girl called Stargirl. She's been homeschooled all her life, but she arrives at this school and she's quite peculiar. On her first day at school, she arrives in a kind of wedding dress sort of thing, and she carries her ukulele everywhere, and she sings to people in the canteen at sports matches. She cheers for both teams. But on the most part, people are pretty lovely to her, at least until halfway through. The one thing, this is where I draw the line, okay? She would cheer for people when they threw things in the bin, and everyone in the whole school would then start cheering as well. In what world? In what world would that happen? This is set in America, and I don't know what happens there, but in Britain, that would not slide. And people do eventually turn on her and start calling her weird, and I felt some sympathy, but I also did acknowledge that she is quite strange. Basically, I just think there's a fine line between being unashamedly you and embracing your quirks and being the freak of the week. And Stargirl is a certified freak 7 days a week. What Taylor Swift has said about this book is that she admires how no matter how much people make fun of Stargirl, she continues to be herself. And that is a fundamentally very nice message. But I just found Stargirl a bit annoying. And that's like not the point of this book, I don't think. So, you know, it's not necessarily something that I would recommend, but I can appreciate that the message behind it is nice. I just would have executed it maybe slightly differently and made the character a bit more likable. Okay, I forgot about one of the stupidest plot lines in this book that really just boiled my piss. Basically, in this fictional school in the book, they create a TV show where they interview students about like, who do you like? It's called The Hot Seat. So basically one student gets roasted by the other students and they ask them about like the local gossip and stuff like that. And then it's broadcast on national television. Why would that be broadcast on national television? Who cares who Natalie from your maths class fancies? I know it's fiction, I know it's a book, I know it's for children, but that is just so dumb. So mostly I just found this completely ridiculous. And I can see why this book is called Stargirl, because this author was on another planet. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Taylor Swiftly on. The next book is this one. This is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. Sally Rooney is absurdly talented. She has this amazing ability to craft believable characters. I think her work is awesome. And Taylor Swift has said, I really like her book. I like the tone she takes when she's writing. I think it's like being in somebody's mind. And I agree wholeheartedly. And I think the same praise could be given to Taylor Swift on her new album. Like, she creates characters who you're invested in and you really feel like you're stepping into their shoes for the duration of that song or the duration of this book. And actually, I have something ridiculously cool to tell you about. I cannot believe that this is a real thing, but I am going to be exclusively revealing Sally Rooney's new book cover over on my Instagram on Monday. What? Literally one of my favorite authors. I am so shook. I can't believe it. So if you're not following me on Instagram, check it out because that blows my mind. Anyways, back to a book that she's already published, and that is Conversations with Friends. And this is all about conversations between people. The story is told from the perspective of Frances, and her best friend is Bobby. They've also previously dated, and they are both students at Trinity in Dublin. They befriend a couple called Nick and Melissa, and Frances and Nick have an affair. It's very juicy, very saucy, and so exquisitely written. Honestly, I would recommend this book so highly. And now is a really good time to read it because they are actually turning Conversations with Friends into a TV series. They're adapting it for the screen. Taylor Swift must be completely fangirling right now because her boyfriend has been cast to play Nick. I'm not gonna lie, when I was reading the book, he doesn't necessarily look how I imagine Nick to look, but I'm very intrigued to see how he plays the role, and I will definitely be watching as soon as that premieres. It must be so interesting for Taylor Swift to see someone she loves become a character in a book that she loves. So yeah, I would heartily recommend this book or Normal People, also by Sally Rooney. And now I have one more book to read. Okay, today is the 9th of April. Fearless is officially out. It's been re-released. I've been listening to it all day, and I've also finished the final book. But before we get onto that, I wanted to quickly talk about Rebecca. So in my previous video where I spoke about all of the literary references on Evermore and Folklore, I mentioned how I had a suspicion that Rebecca probably inspired the song Tolerate It. And let me just tell you, I was buzzing my tits off when I read this quote from Taylor Swift. When I was reading Rebecca, there was a part of me that was relating to that because at some point in my life, I felt that way. And so I ended up writing the song, wait for it, Tolerate It! Yes! I am so chuffed. That's the highlight of my life. I've peaked. I've completely peaked. And I think that makes up for the fact that in that video, I meant to put a quote on the screen from Evermore by Taylor Swift, and instead I accidentally put a quote from the Beauty and the Beast song, Evermore. So, you know, I feel like we've made up for that bit of stupidity by that piece of detective work now. So, you know, Taylor Swift loves an Easter egg. And I found one. I also just knocked everything off my desk. But the final book that I read for this video was this one. This is The Beautiful and Damned by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now, if you watched that other video, you will know that Taylor Swift is a Fitzgerald stan. And in the song Happiness, we have a few quotes from The Great Gatsby. So the green light of forgiveness refers to the green light that Gatsby longs for across the bay. And also, I hope she'll be a beautiful fool is a direct quote from Daisy Buchanan in The Great Gatsby. Now, outside of the Folklore Evermore cinematic universe, we also have some other Gatsby references. In This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things, she refers to feeling so Gatsby for that whole year. And then in Don't Blame Me, there's a lyric about going from poison ivy to your daisy. And Taylor has also posted some quotes on Instagram of This Side of Paradise, which was Fitzgerald's first novel. So she is a stan of this author. The Beautiful and Damned really made me think of Blank Space, both in terms of the setting and the outfits of the music video, and in the lyrics. There's that lyric that goes, new money, suit and tie, and this book is all about new money. It's about a couple called Anthony and Gloria who live in New York City. They're going to all these crazy parties, and they want their marriage to be a live, lovely, glamorous performance. And so they live so recklessly, and what F. Scott Fitzgerald was doing was creating characters where he could kind of experiment with his feelings and his thoughts on his own marriage to Zelda Fitzgerald. And this art of character creation, where you can experiment with the fictional and the non-fictional, is so interesting. And I think that's something that Taylor Swift is experimenting with more and more. If you think about the lyrics on Reputation, they're mostly about Taylor Swift's like direct experiences, whereas in her newer work, we have character-driven narratives where I think Taylor is kind of experimenting with her own thoughts and feelings, but through characters who aren't necessarily completely accurate to herself. And I think that is such a skill and so impressive. So I can definitely see the Fitzgerald influence in Taylor Swift's work, and I think that this is a good place to get some inspiration from because he is very talented. So Taylor has said, "Is something Fitzgerald does so well, to describe a scene so gorgeously interwoven with rich emotional revelations that you yourself have escaped from your own life for a moment." And I agree 100%. So Taylor had some good recommendations. Let's see, which books do I have bad blood with? Okay, Stargirl, baby, now we've got bad blood. Conversations with Friends, You Belong With Me. I don't know what I've done with Furious Love about Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, but I would describe that as, it's a love story, baby, just say yes. F. Scott Fitzgerald has a big reputation, and it lived up to it. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. In fact, You Belong With Me. You should subscribe down below. Please, for the Taylor Swift pun, you've got to do it. Give this video a big fat juicy thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and thank you so much to Stereo for sponsoring this video and working with me. If you want to tune in to my next show, it will be on Monday, and the link to download is down below. Thank you very much. Love you loads. Stay in touch. Bye bye. Oh my god, and stream Fearless. Bye.
In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.